Good evening everyone and welcome to another video. I'm coming to you live from my home and it's been a long day. I've been marking and I'm feeling a little sleepy and a little hungry, but I won't go eat until I finish this video. So pay very close attention, alright boys and girls? Now today I'm going to be talking about two connectors that are very closely related in the way they are used. We've learned about both of them, and which we learned sometime in term 1, and as well as which we learned just recently in Unit 10. So I want to talk about these two connectors because we often use them in a very similar way, but there are some very important differences that will trip you up if you're not careful in your synthesis exercises. Alright, so pay close attention. This will be over in about a minute or two. Alright, so and versus as well as. Let's take a look at a sample sentence, and I'm going to follow this with an example using the connector AND first. So AND. Now can you see here that James loves to cycle? Alan loves to cycle too. If I were to combine these two sentences into one using the connector AND, you'll see that James over here and Alan over here love to cycle. I cancel the two because AND is a connector that replaces this word to. So James and Alan love to cycle. Now notice that loves in this case becomes love. Why is that so? Very simply because in the first two sentences, the subject, James, is singular. So the verb form loves is also singular. One puts S after the verb. Likewise, Alan loves. One of Alan loves with an S. So one puts S after the verb. Over here, likewise, one puts S after the verb. However, when we use the connector AND, we are joining these two subjects together. So now what we have is James and Alan. How many subjects do we have now? That's right, we have two. Two subjects joined by the connector AND. The moment we have more than one, then our verb form has to change. So James and Alan love to cycle. James and Alan, two subjects, love, no S after the verb, to cycle. So always remember, whenever I'm using the connector AND, I'm joining two or more subjects together. And that means my verb form may have to change. Always remember, many, James and Alan, many subjects take on a verb form without an S. Is that clear? Good. Now let's move on to the next connector, which is different, and that's as well as. Now take a look at the same sentence. James loves to cycle. Alan loves to cycle too. The same sentences, I'm joining them in the same way, but instead of using the connector and, I'm using the connector as well as. Now the first part of the synthesis is exactly the same. I move the first subject down, I move the second subject down, so James as well as Alan, here is where it gets very different. James as well as Alan loves to cycle. Now why, you would ask, does this now become a singular verb form? One puts S after the verb, right? Well, very simply because the subject that comes first, in other words, the subject that comes before the connector, in this case James, is now the only subject. And this subject will agree with the verb loves. Everything after the connector, as well as, in this case, Alan, I can ignore. So here, James is the subject, and one puts S after the verb. James loves to cycle, as well as Alan becomes an additional piece of information. Now, let's say this main subject, James, becomes a plural subject. Let's say it's no longer James, but it's the girls. the girls as well as Alan, would it still be loves? You're right, it wouldn't. If it's a plural subject, many here, the girls, we can ignore as well as Alan, the girls love without the S. Love to cycle. So always remember, for as well as, whenever I see the connector as well as, I always look for the first subject that appears before the connector. If it's singular, like in the case of James, then one puts as after the verb. If it's plural, in the case of the girls, then it takes away the S. The girls, as well as Alan, love to cycle. Alright, so very important to know the difference between and. Remember, and combines the two subjects to make it more than one. So it's always the plural form of the verb. No S after the verb. And that's different from as well as, where the first subject agrees with the verb. Not both of them, but just the first subject. And if the first subject is singular, then this verb form is also singular. If this subject is plural, then this verb form also becomes plural. Many, no S after the verb. One, James puts S, loves, after the verb. I hope this has been clear, and I hope this helps you in your revision. See you soon and stay tuned.